What's happening, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Phightin Words. Anthony SanFilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. Not the best weekend for the Philadelphia Phillies, Anthony. Lose 2 out of 3 to the St. Louis Cardinals. Lose 2 out of 3 last week to the Atlanta Braves. Pretty lackluster road trip overall. They do sit at 9-6 this morning, and I do want to point that out. I'm sure we'll have some things to pick apart, and just taking the temperature of the fan base online and on Sports Talk Radio, as I often do. Seems like people are quite frustrated this morning, so it just feels like the appropriate time at the top. A little subtle reminder, they're playing 600 baseball right now. It's okay.
Yeah, if you go 9-6 every 15 games, you win 97 games. So they would actually have a better record than they had last year if they do this going forward. Just point that out.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, the reality of it is over 3 games against the Cardinals this weekend, the Phillies were 14 for 94 as a team. They hit 149 as a team. They were shut out twice. We can talk about both of those efforts. They were 2 for 19 with runners in scoring position, and they only had 2 extra base hits. They were both doubles. So it was a pretty putrid output offensively, wasted some decent starting pitching in the process. And I believe I asked you last week, hey, look at how this team's going right now. And if Kyle Schwarber stops hitting a little bit, my God, what does this look like? Well, now we know the answer to that question because, Kyle slowed up a little bit this past weekend and the Phillies had no response. They had nothing.
Yeah, no, Bob, look, I'm willing to give Friday a pass because of how late they got in, and it ended up being later than we even thought. Yeah, they didn't get to their hotel. Some guys didn't go to sleep until 8 a.m. on Friday.
Yeah, Ben Davis was on the WIP morning show today, and he traveled from Atlanta to St. Louis, and he said that by the time his head hit the pillow, he went to sleep just before 6 a.m. Yeah. I mean, look, here, the reality of it is we talked about this on Friday's show. I love giving a little pat on the back here. I had pointed out that situationally that was a disaster for them. You're talking about a Cardinals team that had basically Wednesday night off, all of Thursday, playing at home. Phillies, meanwhile, 2-hour, 45-minute rain delay on Thursday night, overnight trip, early morning. They're going to bed at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., whatever it is. And then you ask them to come around and play a baseball game that night. And people go, I don't want to hear it. People making excuses. I feel like it actually means more coming from me because I crush this team online. Like, I pick apart everything when they're not doing things well. But the reality of it is, like, that did matter. That probably did play a part on Friday night and what happened. And you said, take the under. Take the under. Yeah, nice job.
Yeah, now so Friday, I could look past Friday. The rest of the weekend bothers me though. Yeah. Like, I mean, especially yesterday. Obviously, you get nothing against Matthew Liberatore, and we could talk about who was in the lineup and who wasn't, and what the hell was going on there. But even on Saturday, in the game that they win, Castellanos has a good game Saturday, but you don't have any. These guys just aren't producing. If you pull Schwarber and Castellanos out of the lineup right now, the rest of everybody else has underperformed, and some have underperformed incredibly poorly. I mean, like so
that's
much.
That's the biggest issue. It's not like, some guys are off to a slow start. It's at like a point where they could go up there with a broomstick, basically. Where they're just giving absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's concerning at the moment, Bob. I mean, I got to be honest. I mean, you look at it and you got to wonder where certain guys' heads are, and what do you do about it? Like, do we keep picking on the same people? I mean,
like how many shows in a row do you want to do? Brandon Marsh and Alec Boehm. I mean, they both are terrible right now. Yeah, like Jerry Martin, Boehm, and Marsh are both useless at the moment. It's infuriating. Yeah. Yes. We talked about that last Monday. We talked about that on Friday. Like, we can talk about it and probably will for a little bit again today. Like, those two guys have been spectacularly bad. And it is a huge problem. And quite honestly, if they don't get more out of those positions, then they're going nowhere. Like, this will be a 500 team on the nose if they have to carry those two guys and have them play any more than 2 times a week. Like, a team cannot overcome 2 absolute zeros in the lineup day in, day out. Like, it's only 15 games. I don't think their numbers are going to finish this bad, but like Brandon Marsh, his OPS is over 100 points higher than Alec Boehm's right now. Like that's like a different way to say what we already know, which is like, how could it possibly be this bad?
Yeah, this is all-time awful starts for these guys. I think I read something in Zalecki's story that like Brandon Marsh is the first batter to be hitting 108 to start the season since Mickey Moniak, and Moniak's was over the span of like 5 months of his first 15 games. And you got to go back to Roman Quinn. Like this is how bad this is right now. Like it's just not good. But you know what, Bob, we can beat on those two guys all we want, and it's deserved. Those guys deserve the criticism that anybody would give them, including us. But the Phillies are spending a lot of money on Trey Turner and Bryce Harper, and these two guys are not performing either.
Yeah, at some point it would be nice to see those guys kind of take over for a 4 or 5 game stretch consecutively. Yeah. And just say, all right, look, we've got some issues right now. We're leaking water in a couple different parts of our lineup. Let's just be those guys, though, that you can't compensate for that over 162. But for a handful of games, while some guys are really scuffling, you need your stars to kind of power you, and they aren't getting that right now. You're right.
Right. That's the thing. Like, I mean, it's not that they've been terrible. They haven't been terrible, but they haven't been what your expectation is either. And so that's the thing. I mean, yeah, Bohm and Marsh have been terrible. Real Muto hasn't been good. Kepler hasn't been good. Stott's been up and down. It's really been like I said, two guys have been consistent, and it's Schwarber and Castellanos. And if they're not hitting, well, then guess what? This is what you get. And you can't lose these like a lot of these games. I submit, and I've been on this show before. I can think back to the year that the Giants were decent when Gabe was the manager, and the Phillies played the Giants in a July series, and it was like, oh man, this is such a huge series. And then the Giants fell apart and they fell out of it. And I said, this series doesn't mean anything. It's just a series in July. I will tell you that this Giants series in April is a lot different than that. And I think it's going to be a lot different because you got to get this right. And this is a team with a really good bullpen coming in for 4 games. And if you can't hit their starters, they got a couple good starters too. And you end up losing games to this team, all of a sudden it's starting to look like, okay, where are you going? Because you're plummeting towards 500. You got the Mets on the horizon in New York, and the Mets are playing decent baseball. Like it could get ugly quick because there's no other internal answers that are going to fill in for these players. Like these are the guys, for better or for worse, that have to carry the team forward at least until July.
And there's this thing right now where you're like, this team's 9-6. Like, this is a pretty good start. If I said to you after 15 games, this being the schedule, a trip to Atlanta, you had the Dodgers here, St. Louis on the road, like, this is a fine start. You'd probably say, I'll take 9-6. So it's weird because you're trying to like live in the reality of, hey, overall, record-wise, not bad. And then, but when you watch it and you see some of the problems that they have, you go like, man, there are some big time issues here and some potentially significant warning signs. And I don't want to do the sky is falling, this team blows, let's overreact to absolutely everything. I don't want to have that conversation, but at the same time, I can't just sit here and tell you RELAX, relax, when you have had problems that have spanned numerous seasons, which now look like they are becoming even more significant issues. Like these aren't new issues. And I even go back to the game that they win on Saturday. And this drives me nuts. And it didn't end up mattering because they didn't play a competitive game yesterday. But humor me for a second. Zach Wheeler goes out yesterday, throws the ball pretty well. Maybe the Phillies managed to score, I don't know, a run. Maybe the left fielder could have made a play on 2 balls that I felt like, and I think a lot of people, if they're being honest, felt like that a good defensive left fielder probably makes those plays more often than not. I'm not saying they're 100 out of 100 balls, but I am saying that a good defensive left fielder probably makes a play there, helps out his pitcher a little bit. Go to the 8th inning on Saturday. 4-1 Phillies. Leadoff, Schwarber singles to center. Castellanos doubles, Schwarber to third. Second and third, nobody out. 3-run lead late Saturday. What do they get? They get Kepler, strikes out swinging. Real Muto strikes out swinging, which was the most problematic of the 3 at-bats that I'm about to mention. And then Bohm, of course, what else would he have done but struck out swinging? They leave the 2 runners in scoring position. Now it's still a 4-1 game. Fast forward to the bottom of the 8th. You have Romano, who threw the ball pretty well his last couple times out. That is a positive that we have seen here. But you go Romano. Then you have to go to Alvarado in the 9th. He's clean. It was a good inning. He was short. He was efficient. Great job. But had you been in a spot yesterday where you were clinging to a 1 or 2 run lead, and God knows that that's all they're going to be clinging to because they don't hit, now you have to bring in your leverage guys again on Sunday, and now you show up in Philly against a Giants team, as you noted, that has a very deep bullpen, and you don't have your guys because you can't put the damn ball in play situationally and pad a lead a little bit. That is another problem with this team. And somebody was giving me a hard time on Twitter because I pointed that out in real time. And they're like, yeah, because every Major League Baseball team wins by 7 runs every night. I said, no, that's obviously not the case. But at some point, you do have to run away from a team occasionally. They haven't done that in about 10 days now since they played the Rockies.
Bob, you're not wrong. It's frustrating because it is every game that the Phillies are. It's close, but
how do you separate from a team when your third baseman has a 331 OPS?
100%. You can't. And so, part of me would be if this was a team that was kind of like an up and coming team, or hadn't had the success that they've had the previous 3 seasons, and they were playing a lot of close games, we probably would be a little bit more positive about this. Be like, hey, they're in every game, right? Yeah. They're hanging in, they're winning a few. This would be exciting, even if even with the struggles, right? It would be a different mentality. But the fact that they are who they are and find themselves in this spot game in and game out is what is so maddening to people, because that's the thing. They shouldn't be in all these close games. Yes, you're going to be in close games. It's the nature of baseball. You're going to be in close games, and you're going to be in close games sometimes against bad teams. It happens, right? Sure. It just happens. But you do need those separator games, and they haven't had them.
And sometimes they're not just going to happen. You don't just show up to the park and beat a team by 6 runs. My problem is when you have an opportunity, though. When the opportunity situationally presents itself to create distance, and you can't do the little things, the easy things, to create that distance in a baseball game. That's what frustrates me. If the Phillies win tonight 3-2, they lose tomorrow, and then they win a game 6-5, and they take 2 out of 3 against a good Giants team that's playing quality baseball right now, I'm not going to be annoyed by that in and of itself. But if they have numerous opportunities to extend a lead or create some distance or win comfortably, and they can't do it because they can't put a ball in play, I do think that it's fair to criticize that. And that's exactly what we saw on Saturday, which is the game that they won this weekend. You go to those other 2 games, they had 3 hits and 3 hits on Friday and Sunday. They didn't have a base runner after the 4th inning yesterday. It was terrible.
Yeah.
So you look at it, and this is what we talked about at the beginning of the season. How will we consume this baseball season? And I think you have to have, some perspective. I think you have to be able to take a deep breath and not freak out after a series loss or 2 series losses. Pardon me. And I know that you can look at the record and say, look, it's fine. Everything's okay. They haven't blown the season here. But at the same time, they don't get that benefit of the doubt because what their issues are. And so it's hard not to be, I'm not looking at this and going crazy, but when they have these at-bats or they just go down quietly and you just go, yep, that's what these guys do. They're going to do this. This is kind of in their DNA. And I don't think that anything has happened through 2 weeks that makes you feel better. Here's where I'm at. I think they're a good team. I still think they're going to win somewhere between, on the low end, 87 and on the high end, probably 93, 4 games if they really get rolling. But nothing's happened here that makes you say they're better than I thought they were, or they've taken a step forward, or I feel better about this part of this team than I did 3 weeks ago. And do you? Is there anything that you feel better about, whether it be an individual player or some unit than you did 3 weeks ago? Because I don't.
No, I don't. Maybe slightly the back end of the bullpen I feel like you said, Romano's had a couple of encouraging outings. I look at it and go, okay, that might be a little bit better than I maybe thought it was going to be. Alvarado showing consistency over the start of the season.
Guy. He might be the one guy that, because I kind of was like, oh, hey, Clearwater, that was encouraging.
Yeah.
And he's had a couple roller coaster moments, and he will again. But for the most part, he has produced for them. He's probably the one guy I feel better about in this moment than I did, 2.5 weeks ago at the start.
But otherwise, no. There's no one else you feel better. All right, I'll give you one more. I think Castellanos' approach at the plate has been really good this year.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Take away the 5 strikeout game again. That was Friday, but no sleep. Right. I'll take that one out of the.
Well, that was before. That was in Atlanta.
Was that?
Yeah, that was the Atlanta game where he hit cleanup for the first time. He went.
That's right. It was Thursday. That's right. You're right. That was Thursday. Okay, so all right. Nevertheless, but that's still the 5 strikeout game was not a good one. But other than that, I think he's been better than expected with his approach at the plate. But there's not a lot. There's not a lot to be super positive about. I don't know. You just kind of wait and see what happens. They went 2-4 on a 6-game road trip. If they would have gone 3-3, we would have been okay with it, right? So it's really only a 1-game difference over that. But even at 9-6, Bob, there are things I look at it and go, are they lucky to be 9-6? Are they fortunate?
Maybe, but like at the same time, I was actually talking to Jack Fritz a little bit this morning, just going back and forth, like, hey, what are you saying? I'll do that from time to time. And I made the point to him. I said, over the last 9 games, the Dodgers, like the big bad Dodgers that everyone had penciled in for about 110 wins after a week and a half of the season, they're 3-6 in their last 9 games. Like they've lost 3 straight series. They lost 16-0 on Saturday and came back and lost on national TV last night. Like, like every team has issues. Every team goes through spells. Every team is imperfect, but you just feel like with this team, given where they've been, given the expectations, given the struggles that they've had, it just feels like we've been here before. And I think that the patience is much thinner than it otherwise would be for most teams. And that's the reality of it. And the other part of it is, like, I look at this, right? And I'm going to hit the usual suspects and the usual talking points first, but then I'm going to get to another problem or another like thing that we haven't talked about. And I don't think anybody's talking about, where I go like, okay, let's see here. So by position, take the players out of it. We know who the players are, but just by position, Phillies center fielders this season, 28th in baseball in batting average, 160 Phillies center fielders have hit so far this year.
And Rojas is hitting like 308, isn't he?
Yeah. 28th in slugging, 220 slugging percentage. Phillies center fielders right now. Somehow they're only 27th in wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs. Okay, and then they have a 508 OPS. Phillies left fielders, and I'll go quickly here. 24th in OPS at 537, 27th in batting average at 159. They're 26th in WAR, 25th in slugging. And then forget third base, because we just know it's like 29, 30, 30, 30. Like, I'm not telling anybody anything they don't already know based on Alec Boehm's numbers. Yeah, by the way, JT Realmuto sitting 238 with a 629 OPS. He has 2 extra base hits and 41 at bats this season. Now, JT's getting a little bit older. He's done some good things defensively. I don't think that you can rely on JT Realmuto as a middle of the order bat at this point, but like he's got to give you a little bit more than that too. And like you said, you mentioned Trey Turner and Bryce Harper hasn't really gotten going. And like JT's sort of kind of gotten lost in the shuffle because you have 3 other guys on any given night that have been so absolutely dreadful that you don't have enough energy to retarget your concerns elsewhere. I mean, that's really what it is right now. So they need more out of the catcher. They need more out of the shortstop. They need more out of the first baseman. Someone has to get going here a little bit. It's like 15 games. The last 6 have been pretty rough. But like you come home now, you got to get on track a little bit. Someone has to get going here.
Yeah, I don't
Somebody does.
Somebody absolutely does. Yeah, we got a few comments, a couple comments I'm going to get to. Chris says, if we're being honest with ourselves, the Phillies are 3 bats short on the roster: left field, center field, third base. And it's not wrong, but I will say this, Chris, go look at every other team in baseball and find me a team that does not have a few bats missing in their lineup. It's just the nature of it. It shouldn't be these guys. I mean, the Phillies have had a problem with 2 positions, left field and center field, for a long time now and haven't addressed it. third base just should be better and just isn't.
You know what's crazy? Like, it put this in perspective a little bit as I was doing the like how bad has center field and left field been. So I do the whole outfield, and obviously Castellanos numbers are fairly strong, so that helps pull this up a little bit. But I was surprised. Phillies outfielders this season have totaled 4 home runs. That's only tied for 19th fewest. Like, it's like weird to me that there's 11 other teams that have hit as an outfield 4 home runs or less so far. I'm like, holy crap. Like, there are a lot of teams that must have some significant deficiencies. Like, even those outfield numbers I just read to you, like 25th or 26th, like there's 4 other tems that have been worse than this. Like, how's that even possible?
It's crazy. It's great. 15 games, I think, will do that for you a little bit too. Just got a couple more. We got Arthur, who's a new listener. Because great show so far, team. Keep it up. Listen to the rest of the episode on the podcast feed. Taking Forest Phillies fans to Queens. Hopefully, offense picks up next week so we don't get heckled. Oh, you're going to get heckled either way. I don't know if you've ever been to a game in Queens. City Field is, by the way, a cool place to see a game. You can hate Mets fans all you want, and it's fun to hate Mets fans. But that's a really good. I'll say this hot take of the day, Bob. City Field, far better than Yankee Stadium.
Fair. I was actually I met up with some college friends over the weekend. We went out to dinner. I hadn't seen these guys in a few years, and 3 of them are Mets fans, and they were all feeling pretty good. That was even after they lost. I think it was like 3 or 4 to 1 on Saturday to the A's. But they're like, positive vibes out there, competent ownership. Nice season last year. Like, they're in a good place mentally right now. Whereas this city, everyone's hair is on fire as we take in the 9-6 Phillies.
So Amy has one for you, Bob. I'll throw this one to you. She says, I noticed some classic Trey Turner swing throughs this past weekend. I wasn't able to watch real closely, but they really stood out to me. I thought he had been better so far this season. What do you say? Are you seeing more patience from him at the plate, or are you seeing the same Trey Turner we've seen the last couple of years?
Well, what's interesting about it? I think the way that the season started, you certainly saw a little bit more patience. We looked at his numbers, like pitches per plate appearance, noting small sample size, and you go, okay, all right, like run a little bit deeper, seems to be a little bit more selective. And I think I mentioned this at the time, but I guess the thing that kind of concerns me is like you want to see improvement in these areas. And certainly he had significant holes as you attacked him last year, and it kind of yielded these prolonged slumps and easy outs, and you can make quick work of them. At some point, though, and I think that he's even kind of hinted at this at times, like I am who I am, and I've gotten this far, and I'm the player that I am doing what I do. And I do think that there's like a little bit of concern, like where you go up there and you're thinking more about pitch selection, running deeper counts, sort of checking those boxes, and then you aren't who you athletically are. Like, the talent doesn't take over the way that it can and has for him in the past. And what I guess I don't know with him is, like, does that impact his overall production? Maybe. Are these things that we have to actually look at and do and improve on because you're not 25 anymore? Maybe. Like, he's the one player right now that I've kind of watched this season, and I think defensively he's been better. Like, so far, I actually think that Trey Turner's been improved defensively. I have not been holding my breath every time the ball goes out to shortstop. I give him credit for that. I see that he's making an effort to improve some parts of his game, but like the bottom line production hasn't been overwhelmingly there either. So it's like a little bit more time, I think, is needed before you look at Trey Turner and say, like, all right, what has he really been this season? Where does he go from here? Like, I just don't have like a definitive feel on Trey Turner. The only thing I can tell you is that, like, again, for the 3rd straight year, I'm not watching a guy that I feel like is an absolute needle mover for this team. And that's disappointing, because I would have liked to have seen him come out blazing hot. Hey, this is the MVP caliber type of player we thought we signed. And again, he hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been, hey, I'll put you guys on my back and steal you a couple extra wins kind of guy either.
No, he hasn't. That's where I think he's been the disappointment since he's gotten here. That's where I think it's been disappointing. You could look at the slumps when he's had them. And they've not been prolonged, but he's had a few. That one goes back a couple years. But and he's not off to a great start here. And you could look at the defense, which in the past has been terrible. It hasn't reared its ugly head yet this season, really. It's actually made some nice plays in the field, believe it or not. But it's that he hasn't been the number 2 to Bryce.
No,
he hasn't
he's
been that guy.
240 with a 340 slugging percentage right now. Yeah. That's not going to get it done. You look even like you deeper, like the hard hit percentage, right? Since he's been here, forget the Washington and LA stuff, but 42.2% in 23, 40.2% last year. His hard hit percentage this season is 21.1%. And like, that's my point. Like, is he giving up some of the authority, some of the damage that he can do because he's cognizant of trying to be a more, let me be more selective within the zone. Let me really think about my chase rate. Are you giving up what makes you good, even if you're flawed? I'd rather see flawed Trey Turner that makes an impact for a week straight and then makes you want to rip your hair out for a week straight than 240 slap hitting non-factor Trey Turner.
Yeah, I mean, it is Bob. This is kind of, I don't know. I would like to think that this guy can be more, and maybe he will be more, but I'm starting to wonder if Trey Turner ultimately just is what is what we've gotten so far.
Yeah.
And just isn't going to be. He's going to have his moments. He's going to have stretches where he's really hot and starts putting the ball in the left field seats at Citizens Bank Park because he can, when he yanks the ball, because he does that every once in a while. When he gets on base, he's going to steal some bags, maybe have a beautiful slide at home plate, and everybody loves it. And but I don't think we're going to see more than what we've seen. I'm starting to get that feeling that just he is what he is, which is a really good baseball player, but not an elite baseball player that we thought we were getting when you signed him with $300 million.
There's probably something to that. And real quick, some of the plate discipline numbers here at Fangraphs sort of bears out like what we're talking about. His out of zone swing percentage has declined from 34.3% to 32.8. Like, that's not a significant decline. It's actually pretty negligible for the most part. But here's what's really interesting. His overall swing percentage has declined from 54% to 48%, and his zone swing percentage has declined from 73.4 to 66. So, like, in being more selective, he's swinging at fewer strikes and swinging less often in the strike zone. So even if you're being a little bit more conservative with your approach overall, it's been at the expense of strikes so far. That's not a great place to be, man. And look, I know that we're on a little bit of a time crunch here, so I do want to just point out one more thing. Zach Wheeler wakes up this morning with 24 and a third innings pitched, and he has a 4.07 ERA, and you go like, what's wrong with Zach Wheeler? And look, he had some weak contact in the game early yesterday. He did lose it for a few batters. He gives up the home run to Contreras. It was running 3-ball counts. He was not vintage Zach Wheeler yesterday, nor was he vintage Zach Wheeler against the Braves back on Tuesday night in that loss to Chris Sale. I would admit that Zach Wheeler does not look like the best version of Zach Wheeler in this moment, but I will just point this out to you. His ERA right now, like I said, 4.07. If Johan Rojas makes that play on the routine fly ball last week, and they don't score those 3 runs in that inning, Murphy doesn't hit that home run, his ERA is sitting at 2.93 this morning. If Brandon Marsh makes either one of those plays out in left field and Johan Rojas makes that play last week, Zach Wheeler's ERA right now is 2.22. So you can be like, look, Wheeler doesn't look quite like himself. Fine. But let's not do the what's wrong with Zach Wheeler thing. Or are you concerned about Zach Wheeler? If they just got good defense from the left fielder and me or you standing in center against the Braves, this guy's ERA is 1.5 less this morning. I'd be a little bit frustrated if I were him, especially as a guy who I know wants to win the World Series. That's the primary objective, but he's also been knocking on the door at Cy Young a few different times, And sorry, but at the end of the year, like those 5 runs could make a difference for him. Like,
yeah, no, you're 100%.
One other thing to be annoyed about.
100%. And the thing that's even more annoying, Bob, is that the guys who have failed him are guys who are supposed to be really good defensively at the position that they were playing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the thing that, like, the Phillies aren't a great defensive team to begin with, but the guys that you look at and go, oh, these are good defensive players at these positions, they're the ones who have let Zach Wheeler down. And that's the even more frustrating thing.
Yeah.
So, but
all right, one last thing.
Yeah, I know we got to wrap her up early today. Unfortunately, I have a meeting to get to, and I think you have one a little bit later. So we had to sneak this in at 9:30 because Russ scheduled it for 9:30 because we couldn't, we can't go up against the Russ Joy show. The Russ Joy show is at 8:30.
What they want.
So you got to give the people the Russ Joy show at 8:30. Can't go up against that. Anyway, so one last thing that I have. You talked about the Cubs beating the Dodgers 16-0 the other day was worst home loss in the history of the Dodgers, home shutout loss for history of the Dodgers. And then they beat them on national television last night. We talked about this last week. The Cubs are for real, right? I mean, this is a legit team. But then they lose Justin Steele.
Yeah.
Who's your boy?
I love him.
You're a big fan.
Back in my no runs in the first inning days, man, he was automatic.
They lose him for the year. Does that impact the Cubs? I mean, in the sense of now maybe they're not as for real as you thought with that rotation when you take Steele out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I've been very surprised by the Cubs early this season, to the point where I'm like, wow, they probably are going to win the Central. Maybe the Central's a little bit better, a little deeper than we had initially suspected. I mean, that is such a big loss for them. They obviously offensively they're doing some nice things. Like I said, it's a pretty good team, but man, I don't know. In terms of like, could you be a factor in October? Probably not. And
it probably puts them in play for a big time starting pitcher at the deadline now.
Yeah, it would. I mean, like real quick, just to kind of jump on that. If you look at the moment, let's see here. Do I have this? Yeah, divisions. The NL East, by the way, Phillies are still favored to win the East, plus 130, Mets plus 145. The Braves, who continue to stink unless they're playing the Phillies, plus 300. Cubs are favored to win the Central right now, minus 120 behind the Brewers, 280. Cardinals, by the way, plus 900 to win the NL Central. One of my friends, he's a Mets fan, was like, the Cardinals are tough and St. Louis is a tough place to play. They're a pretty good team. Right? I was like, Cardinals stink.
Yeah.
Liberatore, come on, man. They made him look like prime Kershaw yesterday.
Yeah, and Andre Pallant earlier on Friday. I mean,
just a guy.
Yeah.
Very disappointing. Very disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that that's a tough injury for the Cubs.
Yeah, that is very tough.
Yeah, it's
you're asking about the Cubs, and I'm talking about how the Phillies can't hit Liberatore.
Yeah, I know. It's all good. All right. Well, listen, we will be back on Friday following this 4-game set with the San Francisco Giants, which I do not think is going to be an easy one for the Phillies. I think they would be happy to come out of this, Bob, 2-2 from this series. And that's kind of what I'll predict. They
got the stopper on the hill tonight, though, Anthony. They're favored. Taiwan and the Phils are favored at home tonight.
Yeah, against a pitcher that they haven't seen before. That ought to go well. That ought to go really well. But I think the Phillies go 2-2 in this series. And then we'll recap that on Friday and look ahead to the big weekend series against the 500 Marlins. Where did that come from? 500 Miami Marlins.
Fever.
Anyway,
Phillies fever, baby.
That's right. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe to Phightin Words on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts. But more importantly, subscribe to it here on YouTube if you're watching us live on YouTube. Click the thumbs up, ring that bell, make sure you never miss a show. You'll get an alert on your phone or your tablet or your laptop to let you know that we are going live to talk all things Phillies. Normally we'll go about an hour. Little shortened show today, but we'll be back on Friday with a regular show, full hour, to break it all down. So for Bob Wankel, I'm Anthony SanFilippo saying thanks for tuning in to Phightin Words, and we will see you on Friday.